From iAfrican Media, this is iAfrican Bites, a podcast that features commentary on African news, insights, opinions, and analysis with tech industry leaders and professionals. Dr. Ayoko, thank you so much for joining us on iAfrican Bites.
Thank you for having me.
Your opening keynote address was wonderful, specifically looking at the role of universities in developing artificial intelligence. But I think before we go there, how did you yourself end up in, AI, robotics, machine learning, and you'll also just wrap it around with a bit of your biography?
Good question. So I studied computer science and engineering at the undergraduate level and was doing a master's program and went to a talk by a robotics researcher and I was blown away. And I decided I wanted to learn more about robotics, so I signed up for an elective course that was being offered at my university, just an introduction to robotics course. I loved it and decided that I would pursue my PhD in that area. So that's how I got into it.
But Doc, let's go a bit further back. Why go into computer in the first place? after matric, or I don't know, is it matric in Ghana?
We have WASI, which is the West African Certificates Examination.
Okay, after WASI, why computer science?
It wasn't my plan, again, right?
These things just keep happening to you.
Exactly, it really wasn't my plan. I went to university, so I went to a liberal arts university in the US, which provided some flexibility in terms of changing your majors if necessary. So I went in initially planning to do some kind of engineering, but I wasn't sure which kind. And as part of that process, I had to take a computer science course because at least one programming course is required for most engineering programs. And it was in that course that I discovered computer science and found out that I loved it.
Wow.
And fortunately for me, I also had, so the professor of that course was very encouraging and he actually encouraged me to pursue computer science, encouraged me that I seemed to be good at it, and so that's how it happened. It was not my plan at all.
The reason why I ask you, Doc, is because there's not a lot of women that go that route of engineering and computer science. So that's why I asked you, what inspired that whole thing. Just walk me through. And during your time, when you were doing computer science and engineering, I'm guessing there were not a lot of females. How was that experience?
So you're right that sometimes I would be in a class with no other women, right? Or sometimes a fewer number. My university had a program, a Women in Engineering program, and I was quite active in that program, and it provided, I think, a good support system. But I also, I was raised believing that women could do, whatever they needed to do. So I also was fortunate enough to have some degree, of confidence and understand that there's no field that should be the exclusive domain of either men or women.
100%.
So even though I was in the minority, I tried not to let that faze me.
Before the start of the interview, we were talking just about the mathematical literacy rate in South Africa. A lot of researchers came out to show how, poorly we do in terms of maths and science, right? From a Ghanaian point of view, what are generally? It doesn't even have to be scientific or research, but what are your observations in terms of the mathematical and science literacy from a basic education level?
I think there's a lot of improvements needed. Unfortunately, as you know, in many places in Africa, we have this approach to learning which is more about rote, right? And just learning by rote, memorizing things, that does not work for math. You really need to understand what you're doing. You need to apply it to problems, right? And I feel that in some, so it's not universal. There are obviously some good schools and then there are bad schools, right? But there's definitely a problem where students are learning math, not thinking of it as a problem-solving discipline, but just thinking of it in terms of formulas and rote learning, right? And I've had the opportunity to interact with some students. There was a student I was trying to mentor, and I realized that even the so-called textbooks that his school was using was not really a proper textbook. It was just a collection of past exam questions and their solutions. So what the students were doing were memorizing exam questions and solutions and really not thinking about the application of math to solving problems. And clearly that doesn't work, right?
100%.
So there's definitely a lot of improvement that needs to happen, especially in, I mean, it's not universal, but especially in low resource settings, low resource schools, there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Now, Doc, let's go to university spaces. I mean, you're advocating for, artificial intelligence and more curriculum, robust curriculum in AI, and many sort of other aspects of, AI and machine learning. Is universities in Ghana, let's start here. Are universities in Ghana attracting the right academia and intelligentsia to remain in Ghana and actually teach this curriculum? People that understand what they're talking about.
It's tough. I'll say, I mean, as a head of department who is responsible for hiring faculty, it's definitely tough to find the expertise that you need, especially because, computer science, AI is an area that is a little bit new, right? So you don't have a lot of, say, PhD programs churning out very strong people who you can then hire to be faculty, right? So you end up looking a lot at people from abroad, right? I mean, so Ghanaians who have studied abroad. And the fact of the matter is they can earn a ton more.
A lot of money in the States or Europe or wherever.
Exactly.
Where investment is much more robust.
And even in industry, I mean, even if they're coming back to Ghana, they can earn more probably in industry than in academia. So it's tough. It's tough finding faculty, but I think we plod on. I mean, the nice, and this is one of the reasons why I'm excited about creating that pipeline. So, for example, some of our former students who have actually gone on into PhD programs, to me, is super exciting, and I'm always teasing them. I'm like, you have to have a timeline. When are you coming back to Ghana, right? When are you coming to be faculty?
You gotta
I don't let them rest. So they all know, right? So who knows what they're going to choose to do, because it's also good for them to be able to have the career paths that they want, right? But I'm really hoping that at least we'll be, some will come back as faculty and we'll have that pipeline of people.
Doc, how did you end up at Asishe University? Am I pronouncing it well?
Ashesi University.
Ashesi. How did you end up? Aseshi. How did you end up at Aseshi University?
So several years ago. So Ashesi is a fairly new university. It was founded in 2002.
Okay.
And in 2003, sometime around then. And around that time, I was doing my master's at a university in the US, and I came back to Ghana just before the university started. And a mentor of mine actually introduced me to the founder and said, I think you would like to meet this person because he's planning to start a new liberal arts university in Ghana. And he knew how passionate I was about the whole liberal arts model of education. And so I got to meet Patrick Iwa at that time, and I was just blown away. I said, this is amazing. And so when I had the opportunity, I came back and taught for a year as a visiting faculty member in the early days of Ashesi, and I obviously found it to be a very fulfilling experience. And so eventually, years later, when I was done with my PhD and thinking about what I wanted to do with my career, it was my first choice.
Beautiful. We're at the University of Ghana. I want to know, how does Aseshi relate with, the Kwame Nkrumah University, University of Ghana, specifically in computer science, AI, machine learning? Do you have co-projects that you do, sort of competitions? Just, make me understand that.
So at the moment, we don't have any ongoing co-projects. I think that's still to come. The nice thing is that we, especially with the University of Ghana, because it's closer, we have built a relationship with our colleagues in the computer engineering and computer science department here. Sometimes I've had an opportunity to teach a course at the University of Ghana. We've also had some colleagues here who have had the opportunity to teach at Ashesi. So we support each other in that way. We don't yet have joint research projects, but I believe that in time that will come about.
Doc, during your talk, you said something that really stuck with me about introducing AI themes and concepts at an undergrad vis-a-vis a post-master's or postdoc level. Why do you feel so passionate about that?
I mean, first of all, AI, robotics, and things like that, they're exciting.
They're very exciting.
And they're a great way to motivate students, even right from the high school level, right? But definitely at the undergrad level. When students realize there's a sense of power when you realize you can create something,
100%.
you know, when you get your first robot actually working and moving, you feel like, wow, I can do anything, right? So it's a great motivator as a starting point, right? Secondly, this is an area where we need more expertise, right? And it has to start from somewhere. We're going to get where we want to go very slowly if we're only thinking in terms of graduate programs, right? We need to think in terms of our undergraduate programs and what students are doing and helping them to understand this, because this is where computer science is going right now, right? So as you're studying computer science, it should be possible for you to not know anything about AI. Everyone needs to know something about it. And it's also important because the more, apart from the people who are going to become the creators in the space of AI, you also need people who just understand it, right? Because who's going to guide our policymakers?
100%.
Who's going to help companies think through how do I
100%.
navigate this space? We
You need that advocate in the room. Yeah.
We need people who understand it, because the thing about AI is that the myths are as much as the facts,
the internet.
right? And so, and there's this fear, right, as well, because of the possibility of AI taking over, you know. So there's a lot going on, and you need people who really just understand what is AI actually, right? It's not magic, right? What is underlying? What are the algorithms? What are the principles underlying it? How can I create my AI system? How do these systems work, right? As I tell my students, if you ask Google Maps, how do I get to the University of Ghana? It's not magic, right? It's not telling you by magic or a crystal ball how to do it. There are algorithms underlying it, and you have the capability to understand those algorithms, even as an undergraduate student. And so really we need those people who have the knowledge, the confidence, that they actually understand this stuff, and that they have the ability to shape how it is applied in our context.
Doc, I like how you talk about in your keynote. You talked about the theoretical balance in theoretical and practical, because a lot in the ICT space we see a lot of companies and recruiting firms going for more people that have more, how can I say, practical knowledge vis-a-vis the theoretical. And we see also a lot of companies like your Microsoft, Cisco, having vendor-specific, certifications, and then just taking those people on, hiring those people. Why should I go to a university to learn about these things when there's so many online and sort of other alternative, ways to receive this acumen?
First of all, I think there's a space for a variety. There's a space for the certifications, there's a space for the university education, there's a space for the boot camps, right? One thing that I think is important is that from the point of view of a university, right, you're trying to help students develop not only practical skills, but an understanding of the underlying principles. Because by the time these students graduate, the world would have changed. So as you know, students often ask, what programming languages or what frameworks should I learn? And my response is that our job is to give you that foundation, because by the time you graduate, I don't know what's going to exist. I don't know what programming language is going to be most popular.
It might be five new ones.
It might be completely
outdated,
new, right? But if you're trained right, you learn how to learn.
100%.
You learn the underlying principles, and those principles are the same
They're the
throughout.
same.
And just at a basic level, for example, programming, right? When I studied programming in university, I studied C++, right? Later on, I was in a program where I was working on a research project where the system was built in Java. So I had to learn Java. No one taught me Java, right? But because I knew how to program in C++, it was very easy for me to learn
100%.
Java on my own. Later on, at the university, we made a decision to change our first year courses to Python.
Python.
Before then, I had never programmed in Python in my life. But guess what? I learned Python and I taught the course, right? Because the principles are the same, right? And for those principles that are different, you're able to learn because you know how to learn, right? And so when it comes to a good university education, the focus on critical thinking, the focus on problem solving, then the focus on the underlying principles that will enable you to innovate. So you understand, so it's not just how to do something, but why it is done in that way.
Yes,
that way, when it doesn't make sense to do it in that way anymore, you're able to discern that and come up with the next best thing.
Yes,
right? So that is what a university education needs to give.
Yes,
right? And so whereas there's room for the purely practical, I do think to be future-proof, you need to combine that with understanding the underlying principles, because who's going to create the next solution that we haven't even imagined yet? Someone who understands the underlying principles and then can build on that to create something new.
For our viewers, go listen to African Bites, the podcast where Doc goes much more deeper into the conversation of curriculum and the different, streams and, methodologies that your university develops or rather, exercises in order to teach your undergrads and yeah, I think it's amazing, Doc. I think it's really amazing. Doc, lastly from my side, the environment in Ghana, the maturation of the sector in Ghana or the ICT economy, is it mature enough to understand the language that you're speaking, the output that your university is outputting from a graduate point of view, from an AI understanding, is the sector understanding? Because you could have all these graduates, but if there's no jobs or the sector doesn't understand or the economy doesn't understand, and then you just have a lot of educated people that are just, not actually doing.
So first of all, the tech space in Ghana is really expanding, right? Which is very exciting. And broadly, so just to clarify, our program at Ashesi is a computer science degree. We don't have a AI major or a robotics major, but all of these courses we offer are within the context
100%.
of a broad computer science program, right? So a lot of people from our computer science program are going to go into your standard software engineering, right? Some are going to go into sort of newer spaces. Some are going to perhaps be innovators and entrepreneurs in this space. Some are going to go on to grad school. So we have some students who are, now doing PhD research in these areas in different parts of the world, right? So I think that there's a room for all of this, and the space in Ghana is growing. And the thing is, I think as an individual and as an institution, you need to look beyond today.
100%.
Right? You can't prepare yourself for the opportunities that are available now, because by the time you finish preparing yourself,
it's finished.
those opportunities are
the bus is gone.
You need to think about tomorrow's opportunities, right?
Yes.
And I think that's really important as individuals and as a university, right? So in a sense, we need to prepare our students for the jobs that don't even yet exist, right? And we need to prepare our students to be innovators who will create those jobs that don't yet exist, right? And it's a reality that we have to be aware of, So, for example, in thinking through this new master's program we're planning, we're very aware of the fact that, some of the graduates of the program are not they're not necessarily going to be hired by organizations that have, the projects and the systems ready to go.
ready
They
to
already
go,
have an AI
yeah.
strategy. But in
They're
many
gonna be the ones that
cases,
developing
they'll be the
those,
people who the
100%.
companies will be relying on to help
develop
chart the
that,
way. That, okay, you
100%.
understand this stuff. What should we do? How should we go out? And that needs to be a reality that we grapple with, right? So we need to, anyone who is studying in this area in Africa, I think really needs to really think of themselves as being part of that group who's going to be charting the way, who's going to be creating those new opportunities. And because that's where we are right now.
Doctor, thank you so much for joining us on iAfrican.com. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being delivering a beautiful keynote. As the official media partner, it's always, I think, within our philosophy and agenda to capture the African technology story in a proper way and in a way that gives us dignity and also, makes the world understand of the truth of what's going on in the landscape. And I think you've just painted a really beautiful picture. So thank you very much, Doc.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.